This conference will now be recorded.
I have a maybe from Leroy, and that's it.
That's about it. Okay. I'll probably be, my video will be going on and in and out because I'm going to go back to my agenda every now and then. If that gets really annoying, let me know, and then I'll take out my video totally. But otherwise, I may go delaying for a while and then come back. But like I said, if it gets annoying, just tell me, and then I'll just cut out my video totally. So with that, you guys, if we maybe want to wait a couple minutes, or should we go ahead and get started?
Start.
Okay. All right, we will go ahead and get started, and
I don't think we Randy Johnson,
Present.
Adele Schmidt,
Present.
Leroy Vogt is excused, Tracy Flukie,
Present.
Annette Obinger,
Here.
Kyle Jago is excused, and Jessica Atkinson. Here.
Okay, then if we would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. How about action on the agenda? Someone can make a motion to approve the agenda, or if there's anything we want to switch around a little bit.
I'd make a motion to approve. This is Dale.
This is Randy. I'll second.
Okay, moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Action on the minutes from the Bike Ped Committee meeting, regular meeting on February 8th, 2021.
Well, so you've got Jeff in here. Jeff, could you kind of introduce yourself a little bit, if you don't mind?
Hi. Yes, I've worked for Ashwaubenon for 6 years. Prior to this, I worked for Green Bay Police Department for 4 years. I worked at the jail as a correctional officer. I grew up in the area, grew up on a local dairy farm in the Ledgeville area. Lived here my whole life, and I love it here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Thanks for getting on the committee, Jeff. We appreciate it and look forward to working with you. So anything you have you want to bring up, please feel free to bring it up in the meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we ever get a confirmation from, was that from Randy? You'd asked about, no, it was about the motorcycle. You only have to wait at the corner for a minute before you can proceed. And we're going to check on the bike. Did you see anything on that? I was just curious for myself.
No, Jason was going to confirm it, but I hadn't heard anything.
Okay. No big deal. I'm just curious.
What it was, Jeff, was if you're on a bicycle and the light doesn't change, a motorist can go after a minute. Can a bicyclist go too? Was the question.
Actually, I checked with Peter. It's 45 seconds for a bicyclist. They have to wait at least 45 seconds is what Peter said.
45? Okay.
45 seconds, yep.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, and I can get you the statute on that, Jeff, if you need it. Unfortunately, I didn't write it down, but if you need to look it up, I can get that for you, or if you'd like to look it up.
Tracy, I think we still need our motion on the minutes.
Yeah, we have not approved the minutes. Is any changes or any questions or changes to the minutes, anybody? Otherwise, I want a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
A motion to approve. Dale. Or Randy can go ahead and I'll second it.
Okay, moved in second. Any other comments? Otherwise, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. And let me go back to my agenda. Then the next thing on the agenda is any comments from the public. I don't believe there's any public there. Susie, Rex, Joel, anybody there that has any comments? Nobody on the web? Nope. Okay. Then we'll go on to site plan review. Kyle was not able to make it today, so I don't know if anybody else has anything from site plan review that they want to bring up. All right.
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say there are a couple of larger projects that are on the near horizon that are going to be showing up plan-wise for site plan review. Joel, I don't know. I don't know what I can say and what I can't say, but you may want to just mention something if people want us. If we're able to talk, maybe we can mention something so people can think about accommodation wise.
Sure. Yeah, the cat's somewhat out of the bag as it relates to the Chick-fil-A project. So that is planned to be presented to site plan review on March 16th. That does have, perceived implications from a bike pet standpoint, primarily because of the volume of vehicular traffic coming through the drive-through. There was a traffic impact analysis completed for that project, and it has been reviewed internally by staff with a number of comments and feedback provided to them. Again, they will present their site plan to the commission on 3/16. And pending any issues there, that's pretty much the only approval that they need, because ultimately zoning and all the other aspects of approvals have already been met based on the location that it's being proposed. And essentially, to give you kind of a clue as to where it is, it's basically going to be across the street from Panda Express. So that Anderson Drive entrance into the mall area, open parking lot, if you will, that many people would consider to be Longhorn Steakhouse.
Yeah, I heard them talking about that site on the radio recently, and they were talking about how bad the traffic was going to be, and they hoped that Ashwaubenon had looked into that a little bit for when it opens and all of that. So it sounds like you have looked into that to a certain degree.
Doug, I don't know if you have any comments on the TIA at all that was done and some feedback that you presented to Chick-fil-A.
Sure. The traffic analysis and design had done a impact analysis for Chick-fil-A being located at the location that's proposed. They had some trip generations as part of their analysis that they presented to us. In our review, staff here at the village, we asked that they go back and if they could provide data or trip counts from one of their Wisconsin facilities so that it isn't a book value, if you will, if it's a real world value from one of their stores. And they did so. They used their Brookfield location and inputted that data into their analysis. And the analysis, again, when it first opens, it's going to be patty bar the doors. It's going to be, wild. It's more so an analysis that as it settles into what would be a normal operation, what types of impacts does it have on the village or county system, if you will, with it being a county roadway, Oneida Street. And in terms of the operation of the roadway systems, the villages and counties, there won't be a large impact. There's a lot of queuing, if you will, on Oneida Street with the turn lanes and the medians. The area that's being discussed further is with the mall and its interior roadway. That's where you're going to see the large impacts. There's not only from entering into the site, but as they leave with their food, as the drive-through leaves with their food and tries to navigate back out, how does that happen? And there were a couple of additional improvements from the TIA that are currently being discussed with Simon Properties to get that not only striped better, but laid out a little bit better for traffic movement into and out of their site. It's no secret it's going to be tight with Longhorns and Chicago, Old Chicago, and everything else. Dave and Buster's there. It'll be tight, and that's where they're probably going to see some of their pinch points. But they have a plan in place to try and assist it as much as possible.
So Doug, they will have another access point to Oneida. It'll just be the one between them and Panda Express now. That'll be the main access to their site off of Oneida.
They will not have a dedicated access off of Woodite Street. Their access comes off the internal ring road of the mall, if you will.
Okay.
You'll enter off of Anderson Drive.
Okay.
And turn into the mall site, and that's how you would access their facility.
Right.
Couple other things. So last site plan, Bohemian, that they're planning on moving on to phase 2, which is going to be a large 5-story building right off of Holmgren there. So that's pretty well consistent with their plan. So that's kind of an exciting project. They do have a kind of a quasi public-private plaza area that'll be off the street, as well as a commercial center or commercial shop, if you will, off of that project as well. They're proposing some type of cafe or coffee type establishment, to be determined who that's going to be. And then other things that aren't necessarily site plan review related, but probably will have some interest from this committee, are 2 plats that will eventually make their way through their process. We're at the very beginning part of that for the Highland Ridge Golf Course. There's likely to be two distinct plats that will eventually make their way through. One kind of a smaller one, I believe off of Main Avenue, correct, Doug? And then one on the north end of the Highland Ridge Golf Course. So the smaller one has got primarily duplex lots that are going to be proposed, and then the larger one up in the Highland Ridge Golf Course is going to be predominantly, if not all, single-family homes, traditional suburban style development.
When are those supposed to begin, Joel?
We have basically just received kind of preliminary sketches for those. So we did have a public informational meeting on I think it's called 3 Putt Meadows, which is the smaller development with the duplexes. Now that has been completed, they'll likely begin to submit their request for rezoning as well as a preliminary plat. So I anticipate those coming through the village in April. The Highland Ridge Golf Course subdivision, that just received kind of the preliminary sketch. So probably April, May at the earliest before that kind of makes its way through.
Okay, thank you.
So on Highland Ridge, one of the things that we'll be tasked to do that we have brought up and we actually started to have early discussions on is for the people that are in the Highland Ridge area, how do we get them across Sand Acres Drive? And there's a couple things, obviously there's the simple roadway onto South Ridge that would go to Sand Acres Park, because that's what I think of all the time. But all along Sand Acres Drive, you also have the trail that's in there, the 10-foot trail. So how do we get people across Sand Acres Drive from the development to be able to use the trail? You also have the Sand Acres Park trail, the crusher dust trail that follows the gas line easement. And is there a way to potentially link up the people in that neighborhood, extend that trailway into that neighborhood? Or how do we get people connected to the Sand Acres Park trail, which will eventually go a little bit further north than what it is right now? So there's a few little discussions going on there.
So those discussions are going on with the developers?
No, just internal right now. We have just opened the book on this project.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the Highland is a very, very, very early concept at this point.
Rex, have you looked at the development off of, is it Grant Street, the one on the south end with the duplexes? Have you looked at that one at all for paths and connectivity in that development? Have you had any weighed in on that at all?
Have not.
Okay, would you please take a look at that one? There's some potential to make it bicycle and pedestrian friendly than it is, and I would love you to take a look at that and see what your thoughts would be.
Where is that, Tracy? Which one?
That is on, isn't it Grant Street on the south end of Sand Acres, Doug, where it's the corner behind the farm that's located on the south end of Sand Acres?
I may have mentioned Main Street, but it's Grant Street. Yeah, I apologize, Tracy. It's at 3 Putt Meadows. That's what you're referring to.
We're good. I was not understanding. Okay.
All right, so
it's already in the wheelhouse.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other things for site plan, you guys, or any other questions on those developments? and input. So we will have a chance to look. It will not come to Bike Ped, is that correct, for those subdivisions? That will just be internal staff review on that, is that correct, Joel?
I mean, they can. Ultimately, I think probably once we get kind of a little bit more concrete direction from the developer, and we have a kind of a SketchUp that we can bring in,
Okay.
then we bring that back to Bike and Ped if it aligns with the schedule for their submission.
Okay.
Plats are a little different. When a plat is received, there are statutory requirements that we have to meet. So it hits a schedule and it has to follow that schedule. So up until that time, once we get something a little bit more concrete on paper that we can present to the committee, we'll kind of keep working on it internally. And then if the schedule aligns, we can get it to the committee for comment and feedback.
That would be great.
Sure.
To get it back.
Tracy. Joel, so just to make sure I understand that. So is there 3 developments or is the farmette part of the other developments?
There's 2 platted subdivisions that are making their way through the process right now. So 2. Okay.
So yeah, if it fits in the schedule and we can take a look at it, that would be fantastic. If it does not, you know, staff is there and they can take a look at it, and you know, they're very aware of things as well. So that will be great, but keep us in the loop as much as you can. That would be appreciated.
Yeah, and even if it doesn't formally make its way to committee, ultimately, depending on how that schedule lays out, we can certainly provide feedback to the committee as to when public hearings are scheduled for the rezoning in particular, or when the plat is going to be presented, so that you can provide written comments or feedback to us as well in advance of it going to the planning commission and or village board.
Okay, that would be great, Joel. Okay, anything else site plan review wise? Anybody wants to ask any clarification or anything more to add? All right, then we will go on to first action item is the update on the signalized intersection survey. Doug, I believe that is you.
I believe it was in January, Tracy, when you and I met, and this stems back to last year. There were discussions for 2021. We were going to get out to some of the locations that are signalized intersections and get some sections of sidewalk filled in where they were needed by the pedestrian push buttons. And I think Tracy, working with the committee, requested to see an inventory that encapsulated a few more items, including the countdown timers, the style that they were, push buttons, locations and styles of push buttons, the accessibility to them, a confirmation on activation when depressed. Sidewalk improvements are needed to get to those buttons, jurisdiction of the intersections, sidewalks adjacent to these intersections, marked crosswalks. And then at the last meeting, there was, it sounds like there was discussion on adding to that inventory the signs for the PED buttons, their location and which way they're facing, and then an ADA compliance statement for the crosswalks or access ways onto the roadway. So met with our consultant that's assisting us with some of this work, and they've got Holmgren Way and those intersections nearly completed. They were delayed a little bit with some of the ADA confirmations and grade checks and things of that nature because of the snow and ice, but over the past week and a half here, that's cleared up nicely. And then 2 of their engineers came down with COVID. So it's in process as it stands right now, hoping over the course of the next month, we'll have the remainder of the intersections completed that I can come back and review this with everybody. But in the interim, I just wanted to confirm that there weren't any other additions to this inventory from last meeting. I'm assuming there isn't, but this is, if there are any changes, if you will, it'd be good to know now because we're about halfway through it, and I'd hate to see them have to go back and redo a number of intersections, if you will. So it sounded like everything was situated after the last meeting. I just wanted to give an update and confirm that all is good on the inventory and from you folks.
Anybody have anything else to add that beyond what we talked about at our last meeting for Doug to check into, or any concerns on anything? Comments?
Nothing for me.
I know one of the things that was brought up to me, Doug, was if volunteers could help do the work and go out and do the work. And, you know, my comment, and you can maybe further on this, was, you know, some of it is pretty technical to look at, and to have an engineer or someone doing it and making sure we get all the information we need. And then, you know, I was thinking, you know, maybe in the future with changes at the federal government, there might be some more grants and things available for us. And to have that information set and ready and done by an engineer, it may get us ready to apply for grants that way easier. But I don't know if you have any other comments on that, Doug, to bring that, you know, in regard to a volunteer versus an engineer going out to do it all?
Sure. No, and we appreciate the offer for assistance, and it's not like engineers are hogging the work. We don't mean that at all. It's strictly from some of the items with ADA compliance and the grade shots and the confirmation of those types of things. They're going to be out there doing those anyway, and Steve and I are assisting in some of that. So when we're out there doing so, to do the other items doesn't take a lot of time. It's the kind of the compliance checks, if you will, that take a little more time. And that I wouldn't want to put on somebody, that if a question came up in the future that, you know, we're asking that of a volunteer or a committee member, that we don't want to put anybody in that position. Not that it's a big deal. It's just that we deal with that typically. So it's right in our wheelhouse.
You know, and maybe in the future, Doug, when you get it done, we could do almost a field trip type thing, that we could go to an intersection and the committee could meet out there, and you could, you know, walk them through it and what you guys are looking at and why this is a problem or why this is good or bad. Because then people really get a feel for it and they can see it on their own too, maybe a little bit better.
And I would almost like to, after we get some of these improvements done also,
Yeah.
I think you and I talked, and I know I think there were some questions from the committee on that end. What this initially started out as was getting some hard surfaces to some push buttons that don't have hard surfaces currently. And that's where I had a little cause to pause on an inventory like this, because it's a decision of, do you want hard surfaces to these push buttons to get access to them, or if a statement is made they aren't ADA compliant. Now, they may not be by very much, but you aren't going to tear out sections of curb or parking lot or, you know, other features to make it such until you redo an intersection. It's trying to cure some problems that are out there right now. And that's where I think it would be beneficial just to see some of the improvements that are made and then compare it to what's on the inventory. I think would help everybody.
Yeah, I think that would clarify it a bit, Doug, and make it easier for people to understand that.
Very well.
Anything else, anybody in the comments or questions for Doug on the signalized intersection? And Doug, what do you think you'll be done next meeting? We would have more, or you'll be done by then, or what do you think for timeline?
I'm hoping for the next meeting.
Okay.
Worst case scenario would be the May meeting. Either way, a spring, early summer field trip, if that's what the committee would like.
Okay.
Warmer temperatures and sun would be great.
That would be really nice. All right. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. Anybody else have anything? Otherwise, we'll move on. All right. Okay, next agenda item then is action on the bike and ped questions formulated for the new Village of Ashwaubenon strategic plan. And Joel, I believe you have that on there, and could maybe talk about that with the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. So in your packet are a set of draft questions. These are not fully determined yet or approved per se by the village board. So you're really kind of actually, in fact, getting a copy of these questions before the board is. So congratulations on that. Ultimately, these questions are kind of, as we discussed last meeting, this high-level overview of how the village is performing. And then we get into a little bit of some detail without kind of delving into a lot of the weeds per se. Now, a couple of quick things. As mentioned last meeting, this survey is going to be a component of our overall strategic planning process. That process is actually scheduled to begin tomorrow evening with the board and some key department directors and staff here at the village. Part of that effort will be to look at these questions and ultimately determine if there are revisions to the question list or additions to questions that are necessary. From a point of view for the Bike and Ped Committee, a couple of quick things. One, we have under question 4 of the existing list of services that the village provides, indicate how important those services are to you or your household. And there'll basically be 4 options that they can choose from. And we do have a few items that are related to bike and ped interests. So we have the availability of sidewalks and walking paths, the availability of bike lanes and bike paths. And then we have a question on pedestrian safety. And that was probably of interest very recently because we did have an incident involving a pedestrian crash within the last 7 days. So I do have a general question about snow plowing and ice control, but it's not specific to sidewalks and trails. So that may be an area that you might be interested in queuing in. So that's the list of services that we identify as most commonly used within the village. Obviously, we can get into some very specific level of services, maybe like specific rec programs and things like that. But by and large, these are kind of the high level services that we provide. And then the next question gets into, basically that same list. How are we performing in those areas? So the first question is, how important are those services to you? And then comparatively, how are we meeting those expectations for services for you and your household? So they'll have the same list from question 4 in question 5. And then of course, at the end, we get into a couple questions that I think are important. Obviously, the first one would be under question 8, which talks kind of more about cost. So again, real kind of high level question. If you want to increase your services or increase the value or quality of the services, in all likelihood, that's going to come with a cost increase. How willing are you to pay for those? Do you want to pay it in property taxes? There's ways to shift cost burdens within our budget, whether it be through property taxes, increasing user fees, or maybe doing some type of special assessment program for certain services that are allowable. Or do you want to, cut other spending and related services that maybe are of less importance to you? And then finally, of course, question 10 is just tell us any other comments that you wish to make. What we're intending to do is just get a real high level overview. This is not going to be a scientific survey by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a quick, hey, how are we doing? A quick check-in, if you will, a temperature check. I suspect that under question 10, that if somebody is very passionate about something, they're going to list it there. So maybe they're upset about snow and ice control on the trails at Mansell Flats. They're gonna put that there. They're gonna list all of their desires under that question. So, and we, of course, we wanted to do that. We wanted to make sure that we provided an avenue for people to share however they're thinking. So with that, I guess I'll take whatever feedback the committee has on the set of questions or any additions or corrections that you'd like to see made.
Joe, is that kind of a generalization? I mean, these questions, have they been used in other communities, or did you guys just take the time to try to think up every one of those questions?
Well, I've used these questions, and I know other municipalities have used these questions before with other strategic planning efforts. In fact, my prior community, 2 communities ago, I should say, in Buchanan, we would send out this survey once a year as part of one of our quarterly newsletters and allow people to fill out the survey. And it kind of gave us just a grade, if you will, about how well we were performing from year to year. And you can start to see trends.
Sorry, go ahead.
And you can start to see trends over time, if there are areas that are changing or that type of thing.
That's what I was looking for, to see if you felt that they were helpful. Because I actually went online and I looked up, there's a number of surveys, obviously, from all kinds of cities. But they are more specific, especially in the bicycle and pedestrian area. So I think when I look at your questions, they are very general, but I think for high level for now, that's probably the way to go.
I have a couple comments from Kyle Jago, if I could read those into the record. Do the rest of the group get these or not?
No.
Okay.
Forward it later.
All right, so Kyle emailed this morning when he knew that he would not be able to be here. And I'll just read it verbatim. Regarding the survey, I have not heard back from Michelle Bacchus. So Michelle's with the Wisconsin Bike Federation. And so obviously Kyle has reached out to her and probably talked a little bit and requested feedback from Michelle. My questions, his own personal questions or suggestions are, number 1, how suitable / safe / convenient, pick one, is Ashwaubenon for biking and walking? How suitable, safe, convenient is Ashwaubenon for biking and walking? Number 2, and he said, which may already be addressed in question number 4, is how important is walkability / rideability? And number 3, do you walk / ride for exercise, recreation, transportation, or commuting? Do you walk, ride for exercise, recreation, transportation, or commuting? So those are some of the comments that Kyle had regarding the survey questions as were presented.
So those are some of the ones that I think it's a little more specific, because some of the ones I found were how important is bikeability and or walkability when choosing where you live or work, which is a pretty important one. But if you want to be general, I think that's going a little bit beyond what you're looking for at this point, Joel. Another one would have been, how important is it for Ashwaubenon to invest in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure? Well, your general question kind of gets to that, right? How important is it to them? And then the other question is, do you believe bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure adds value to your community? Things like that. There's so many surveys out there. I mean, I could have went on and on and on, but I think I'm kind of in a ballpark where you said you wanted to be generalized. I think you got it in my mind with those couple of questions to start.
What is the plan after the survey goes out moving forward? Like, will this be something that the village wants to start doing regularly? Will they take this and then tweak questions off of it? I know you said it's expensive to obviously do surveys as well. I don't know if the village has ever thought about going more of like the electronic route with doing more QR codes and links and things like that, trying to push them out to get more public feedback from that standpoint. But just curious with this being, I think it's good to be starting more general, but then what is the plan after you get some of that feedback to then kind of drill it down? How?
Right, so in this particular case, what we plan to do, because we don't have necessarily a budget per se to conduct this survey, so this is going to be primarily an electronic survey. Of course, residents could theoretically come in and we can help them through kind of a managed kiosk, if you will, to enter the survey data. So we'll get this out through some type of postcard or insert into utility bills or something to that effect. And residents will have about 2 or 3 weeks to complete the survey, and then that'll come back. At that point, we're going to formulate our strategic goals as part of our strategic plan, utilizing this data from internal staff surveys that we plan to put out, as well as kind of our visioning sessions that we will work on. From that point, depending on how the feedback is received and what type of feedback we get, I think that will dictate what that next survey effort will be. It could come back that we need to delve into this in more detail and get very scientific and generate some true empirical data. And then at that point, we'll do that. So we'll base it on how this survey is received. If we have a high degree of success and we feel like we're getting valuable, constructive feedback, maybe this survey is something that we do on an annual basis, and we just kind of make it part of our routine to begin measuring data. The other aspect of it too is as we complete our strategic plan, every year we should be evaluating our performance. So we may come up with different survey questions based on what our goals were and our action steps in the strategic plan. So it's very possible that this could be a reoccurring type theme for us.
So Joel, last time we talked about this, I just heard you say postcards. I don't know what it costs to send out a postcard, but we had talked about the water bills and putting something in with the water bills. And I know we weren't sure what that cost would be. I think you had a general idea from some things that have been done in the past through the Park and Rec. I think Rex mentioned something, what it kind of costs. So it doesn't make any difference to me. You guys, you're going to figure that piece out, but it's just another avenue, right, to get that information to them to respond.
Dale, I think when we sent out a bookmark for our summer concerts, historically, that probably runs around $750, $800 these days for all the residents to get one in their water bill.
Okay.
So that includes the printing and, the insertion.
Yep.
I would suspect, based on the number of total parcels that we have in the village, if we were to send out an individual postcard, we're probably $1,500 to $2,000. And now we have the postage, the printing, and the.
Sure. Yeah. That's just a thought, because I'm assuming everybody gets their water bill in the mail. I could be wrong.
The only comment I have on it is we have the pedestrian safety on there. What about saying pedestrian/bicycle safety? Or put bicycle safety separate, because that's part of it too. And the other thing, we've talked about this a little bit at the committee, is for the availability of the sidewalks and the bike paths and walking paths, if we'd want to put year-round availability, or if that's going to limit it too much, and some people are going to say, no, it's not important to them because it's year-round, they don't care, or if we wanted to throw that into the mix, or if we just want to leave it, a general availability. So that was the only other thing I had on the questions.
I'm just trying to think of how, we have a question on there for snow plowing and ice control.
Yeah.
I break that apart into, I can't think of how I would word that, but have one for roads and basically one for sidewalks and pedestrian and paths. You kind of break those apart so people know that we're talking about roads and one about sidewalks and paths.
I think the hard thing.
That's a good way to hit it instead of saying year round.
The hard thing you're going to run into, I feel like, with that is, depending on where they live, someone's going to be answering it because they are maintained by the village, and someone's going to be answering it because they're not maintained by the village, and it might be difficult. That's my only, just because the way I like the way you have it on here with the ratings, but then I think, you could have someone saying they think we need a ton of work in it because they have to do it themselves, and then you have someone else saying we do great in it because the village does it, and you're not kind of comparing apples to apples.
Sure.
Any other comments or suggestions on the questions, anybody?
This is Randy, I just had a couple. The coding system, like starting in question 1, kind of, at least when I looked at it and kind of filled it out myself, kind of leans at the low end. I don't know if that's intentional. You know, your second highest is good, which is kind of bland. Then you go to fair. I don't know what the difference is between good and fair. And then you kind of have a poor. So I think it kind of, you know, they always say the question can impact the answer extensively. I just feel good, fair, and poor are heavily leaned towards negative ratings, lower ratings. So just a thought. So a lot of people have a hard time going at the high end.
What would you suggest, Randy?
Excellent, very good, and good. And if you want to put a poor in there, that's fine.
So
I just think the fair and poor are pretty close. If you go to a store and you say that was fair, I don't think that's. I haven't been to a store for a while, but I don't know if that's real strong. So I just, as I was filling out, it just seemed the way it was set up with excellent, good, fair, poor, just was leaning more towards the negative. Just a thought, something to think about.
So yeah, I changed it based on that feedback. So if we go from excellent, very good to fair/poor.
Okay, that sounds good. Code enforcement, that's not police, that's code, right? When you say code enforcement?
Yeah, that would be more like zoning related matters.
Garbage cans out in front of the house, that kind of thing?
Right. Exactly.
Cars in the front yard?
Correct.
Kind of like your house.
No, now Rex, I have never, Tracy knows, I go out at like 4 in the morning, I don't put those cans out to the day out, you know? And I got them out by 7. No, just kidding. I had a, on question 8, Joel, I had a hard time. The question, it said village services can be paid through property taxes or direct user fees, charges, and assessments, or a combination of both. And when I read it, it looks like there's 3 options there. It was a little confusing for me. I think you mean direct user fees, charges, and assessments is all one.
Yeah, I think, well, what I do want to separate those into 2 distinct ones. So I would, instead of saying a combination of both, I would just say a combination of any of these.
Okay.
These sources or something like that.
Okay. And then underneath that last one, I don't know what you're trying to get at with it, but I think it would be a totally different question if you had said cut services and related spending. I don't know what you're trying to, the way that question's asked, I think is going to really influence the answer. Everybody likes to cut spending, so they'll read that, yeah, cut spending. But if you say cut services and related spending, I think you get different answer. You know what I'm saying? So just as a thought.
That's a good catch. I think that's a great idea.
That is. Yep.
And then my only other questions, that was nice with 4 and 5, you know, all the different services we get. I think that was great just to show us what we get. I mean, a lot of people don't, you're doing that kind of indirectly by asking the question that make people think about what they do receive for their tax dollar. I think question 6 becomes very difficult for me when I was going through. I suppose municipal court is how they treated me. The manager's office, I don't know what that's supposed to do. Which one of the services does that person deal with? I thought 4 and 5 are kind of nice, but then it kind of got a little redundant with 6, and I had a hard time seeing what that did. You already had Rex up there with your recreational programs and what was the other thing? Village parks. I don't know what else, why you would ask for parks, recreation, and forestry. So that's just a thought. It seemed to be redundant, question 6, when you had 4 and 5 so detailed.
You know, if we change that to something to the effect of in programs and services where you've had a direct contact during a, what we're trying to do is say, okay, I had direct contact with Rex's staff.
Sure.
And I had a good experience working with Rex's staff.
Yeah.
So I think that's what our intent is there, but I agree that that's probably a little redundant and misleading. So that would be our intent with that question is, what was your direct customer service experience like working with these different departments? So I'll look at that question to figure out how to best.
Well, maybe start it like you said, Joel, if you've had contact with any of the following departments, how was that service or something? And you can look real quick, and I go down, I could say, well, municipal court would be my only one.
That you've had direct contact?
Oh, I'm just kidding. Okay, thank you. Good work on this. I'm anxious to get it in either a postcard or online or however I end up getting it. So I got my water bill today, so it'll be kind of late for that. So.
Okay, yeah, you'll probably get a postcard then.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comments, Randy. Anybody else have anything they'd like to mention to Joel? Okay, thank you for putting that and bringing that back to us, Joel, for us to have some input for it with it. Okay. If nothing else on that, then we'll move on to 8C, discussion and possible action on bike and pedestrian committee completed projects. And Rex does have a list here of the completed projects. Before we go further on that though, Rex, I have two clarifications from you. Are you only going back 5 years, or are you going since Bike Ped was created or developed, or what are you trying to go back to?
I'm thinking since Bike and Ped was developed, which is probably going to be around 2004, 2005. And I tried to go back through some of the old agenda items of what projects we've worked on, what ones we've been involved with. Not necessarily everything is an actual project. It's more of talking about, or a concept or an idea. Like for instance, the grant that we got to hand out through that insurance company to hand out the flashing lights, and some of the bike vests and the safety vests and things like that. So that's what I was trying to do, is just kind of go back and talk about the different projects and or ideas / programs that were either initiated or that we spent time on to bring them to the public's forefront since the inception of the committee.
Okay, because the committee started as a result of a walking workshop that was done. The village got a grant through the public health department, and they held a walking workshop, which was just for residents as well as any of the staff members and anybody else. And one of the outcomes of the walking workshop was the development of the bicycle and pedestrian committee. And I don't remember what year that was. Randy, do you remember? I was trying to think of.
2004.
Oh, 4? Okay. So then the committee obviously was formed as a result of that walking workshop. And then several years ago, Rex, the committee was changed as far as the status of it. Is that correct with the village?
It became a standing committee Mike's last year in office.
Okay. All right. So I knew there was some change to that. All right. And then, some of the other things that I thought of that aren't on the list, but again, I don't know how far back you want to go, but the Packerland Drive pathway from Wabi to Cormier was built probably in the 90s, I think. Packerland Drive from Wabi down to Fernando was an piece that I didn't see anywhere, unless I missed it.
My thought was, to me, the purpose of this was to not necessarily justify, but to show when people wanted a history of our committee, what has gone through our committee. So that's when I started. That's why I started at 2004, 2005, because that's when the committee was formed. I came on in late May, early June of 2005, and I think the committee had been around for about a year. I think maybe a little less than a year at that time. So that's kind of where my starting point was for this list.
Okay. All right. So the West Main Avenue Trail, from commodity to Packerland. Was that in prior to that then, Rex? It must have
Yes.
been. Okay.
Yeah, now the addition from commodity to Sand Acres is obviously, but the trail from commodity to Packerland was in prior, I think, to the committee becoming, that went in, I think, along with the industrial park trail, Tracy, didn't it? Under your watch?
Yeah, I think it was. I was thinking that was earlier than before the date you're looking at.
Yep. So I guess what I'm looking for is if anyone sees any omissions of things that we have worked on. And again, it's easy to focus on the project, but we talked a lot about concepts and different grants, and we did the Safe Routes to School grant over at Valley View School. I tried to put that on there. Different things like that is what I'm looking to put on there of what we have had good discussion on, and if we didn't do it directly, how did we, anything that we may have indirectly influenced project-wise or program-wise. I know not everyone, there's a few people that have been around since the inception.
Yeah.
And Tracy.
I was a teenager.
Yeah, right from the start.
Yep.
You still are, Randy.
He's still.
Well, I guess rather than trying to rack the brains, if anyone comes up with something, I mean, this is certainly a list that can be added to at any given point.
Sure.
So even if it's a month or two from now and we're talking about a particular project, we're like, hey, that's not on our list. We can add that. So just keep that in mind as we're moving forward. If anything comes to mind that's not on here, we can add that on. Just bring that up at a bike and ped meeting, and we will do that.
Oh, I know one thing that I didn't notice on here is the sidewalk on Vanderpuren from Holmgren Way to the Ashland Frontage Road. Because that was put in last year, is that correct, Rex? I think I saw that on there. Here.
Sorry, what's that, Tracy?
Vanderpuren from Holmgren Way going east to the Ashland Frontage Road, right? You know, at the intersection of Ashland there, it kind of curves down and goes on the frontage road going towards Broadway Chevrolet.
Yep. Okay. Yes, as part of the reconstruction there. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Yep, that's a good one. All right. Like I said, just bring them up as they come along.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Next is D, action on bike plan project additions. And again, Rex has the document, the full document there. And I think on that one too, Rex, Vanderpuren, I did not see on that one either.
Well, do we want it on there if it's completed?
No, I'm sorry. That is not on there. What I was thinking is what should be added on there in Vanderpuren is a sidewalk between Oneida and Holmgren. So completing that stretch all the way from Oneida to Holmgren Way on Vanderpuren, if that could be added in there.
Gotcha. Yep. So adding some of this stuff, and maybe, I don't know if we can go back, but do we need to do any kind of motion that we want to add anything does there need to be a motion every time we want to add something to actually change the plan then?
I'm not sure, Joel, you think, or Rex, what do you think, Susie? Motion?
I think it probably would be appropriate only
Yeah.
because we're adding something into a public document, you know, that is a comprehensive plan. So
Yeah.
I would just probably say we want to do a motion that that we're good with what's being submitted, and every time we have an addition, we'll probably need to do a motion officially, because it's a change.
Okay, so then let's go back to the last agenda item for the projects that we have done already. And if someone would make a motion in regard to the Vanderpuren addition to that list, please.
You can make the motion, I'll second it.
I can make the motion?
Sure.
All right, I'll make a motion to add Vanderpuren as a completed project from Holmgren Way to the Ashland Frontage Road.
I'll second it, Dale.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you, Rex, for bringing that up. And then let's go to the agenda item we're on right now with future projects. And again, looking at adding a sidewalk on Vanderpuren, same road, from Oneida Street to Holmgren Way as a future project. So motion for that. Anyone second it?
Second, Brandy.
Andy? All those in favor say aye, or any discussion?
Aye.
All those in
Aye.
favor say aye. Thanks.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried. Thank you, everybody. Any other discussion on the future projects that anybody has besides Vanderpuren?
Yeah, so I have a question. Sue, I'm not sure if you wanted this to be partial, but I'm looking at what you and what I filled in, and the 2021, the 2019, the 2020 stuff is not on here. This stops at number 2019-1. There's 2019-2, -3, -4, -5, then there's 2020-1, so there's a few sheets missing. And the only reason I bring that up is because we didn't discuss, you know, voting to add those. We did add them.
Can't speak to it without looking at the other spreadsheets, Bill, I'm sorry.
Yeah. We can maybe do it next time and just review
Yeah,
it because,
yeah, do we
yeah,
want
we
to
have
add
all
it?
that on there, and we just put in the recommendation date was Rex meeting of 3/8/21, but if we need to approve that, then we probably better go back and do that.
Okay. So you, Dale, you and Susie got together and put all the future stuff in, so or 2019, 20, and some 21 stuff you put in there that just didn't get to us all. So Susie, if you can maybe get that to our next agenda, and then we can look at that. And
Yeah,
then
so I think Sue's got it. I think it's just for some reason in the PDF to you, it didn't get printed out
okay,
somehow. Well, her and I'll confirm it before we send it out to everybody next time,
okay,
that it's up to date.
great. Does anybody have anything else besides the ones that Dale just mentioned that obviously we don't see, but anything else that anybody had for future that you would like to bring up? The things that I was thinking of maybe could be thought of or added to that is what Joe was just talking about, and Rex, about the 2 subdivisions that are coming in on the south end of our community. At least thinking about them, that may be something that we would look at adding in the future, you know, some connections to that new subdivision on the golf course, and maybe some connection to that new subdivision potentially on Brent Street on the south end of Sand Acres. So maybe those are things to think about and see if it's appropriate to add that to our list as well. But I don't know if there's anything with the other developments with, what was it, the Chick-fil-A, that's one I think is pretty set, but the Bohemian, anything there, Joel, that would need to be added? I mean, the sidewalks are there already, but anything else in that area?
No, everything is pretty well standard already.
So Tracy, how do you want to proceed with the 2 subdivisions? Do we want to wait till plans are better? are officially submitted and then have that as an agenda item?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Rex. Wait till those are submitted, see what they have, and then just, and when we get it kind of more finalized, then look at adding it to the list so we have it in there.
All right. So that may or may not be at the next meeting, but when that time comes, we'll get it on the agenda.
Yep, that sounds good. All right, anything else, anybody on that agenda item? And we'll bring it back with the other items that Dale and Susie have already put together, and we'll do that, and then we'll just keep looking at in the future the other ones. All right. Then the next agenda item, action on Village of Ashwaubenon recreational trail clearing and possible prioritization. Rex, any comments? You want to start us off on that, or Joel, either one?
I don't have any.
I don't have anything new at this point.
One thing that I've been thinking of, it's very hard, I think, to prioritize what trails to clear. And I think one way we can maybe look at a little bit that might help us is look at connectivity, mobility, and access, like kind of being the priorities for that, with maybe mobility being one of the first ones we look at, looking at the area and see if there's any other way to move through that area by foot along that corridor other than someone having to walk in the road. So if there's no sidewalk and the trail is really serving as a sidewalk, then maybe we should consider clearing it. Then you have connectivity. What does it connect to? Are there other ways to get to that facility? Is it connecting to another trail? Is it connecting to a neighborhood? Thinking about that as well as we're trying to prioritize. And then access. Does that trail provide access to people to get to like a bus stop, a grocery store, a restaurant, a park, anything like that, to keep that in mind as we're trying to look at the priorities. And then you have the trail serve a recreational purpose mainly. Is it a transportation corridor? Is it used mainly for fitness? So those three kind of uses of a trail, and see how the trails that we have fit into that priority, looking at it in that three ways, to see if that's some way that we can come up with a priority, or once we look at it, we say, okay, how do we really set a priority? Because really all the trails, how do you say in your neighborhood, we're going to clear them, but we're not going to clear them over in this neighborhood?
So I do have some comments from Kyle Jago also on this one. If you're okay, is everyone all right if I read them into the record then?
Absolutely.
All right. Regarding the priority for clearing the paths, my preference would be to clean paths in residential areas first. Those would be Argonne, Sand Acres, and Ashwaubenon. Pepperland would be a lower priority for now, but if Hobart expands and maintains their trail system, Packerland would be an important connector and may deserve further evaluation. The industrial trail would be my lowest priority. So that is from Kyle. So he's looking more at residential. If the trail is in a residential area for that usage, I guess that's how his train of thought is.
So does the owner or does the village have the responsibility for the ones on Packerland by like the McDonald's and that whole area there?
What do you mean, do we have a responsibility?
For cleaning the pathway?
Well, we sweep it, yes.
By snow removal?
If the village board were to say we're supposed to remove the snow, they want us to remove snow, then we would remove the snow. It's our trail.
But at this point, it's not. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to get back to Tracy's idea of priority, and you got businesses there where people are trying to walk from a motel to go eat, and some of the businesses clear it, right? Some of them don't. You would think they'd want them cleared, but But that's why I like your idea, Tracy, with the priority. Is it residential? Is it commercial? Is it, so, don't know. Don't know how many people walk those paths neither.
I'm confused. What's the difference between a path and a trail? And then are all the trails blacktopped?
I think the trails that we're talking about, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Rex, are just the paved trails, Annette. And people can call trails, they can call them paths, they can call them a use pass, they can be pedestrian ways. I mean, there's a lot of different names for trails, but typically I would think of a trail as a 8 to 10 foot paved trail that's used bidirectional, so they go both directions on it, and it's used by bicycles, pedestrians, anybody can use it except for motorized vehicles. That's what I would say we're really talking about here. Rex, is that where you're at on this?
Correct. I think we've had this, a little bit of discussion like this in previous meetings where if it's a crush or dust or a non-paved trail, it wasn't going to be cleared at all. We're only talking about the paved trails in terms of being cleared.
Yeah.
Okay, then you still have trails that are paved and trails that are not paved and paths. What paths do we have in the village, or are they all trails? I think to me, you just have to get I'm confused, get it straight.
How I would look at it,
Not paths then.
and that is, I would say that anything pretty much over 5 feet in width that is adjacent to or within the right of way of an existing road. Let me back up. So a sidewalk is going to be generally a 5 foot concrete walk immediately adjacent to a street or a road, right? So that's side. Anything over that 5 feet, generally it's going to be in that 8 to 10 foot range, and it's paved, and it's up against or adjacent to a street or a road. How I would define that is it was being called a side path or a side trail, right? It kind of is like a sidewalk, but it acts like a trail. Trails would be the bit of recreational type elements that are in a greenway or in a park or something to that effect.
That's where I get confused, because when I think of the park across from Schneider National, what park is that?
Hidden Valley.
Hidden Valley.
Okay, that does not have a trail. Technically, that has paths because it's inside the wooded area and it's crushed. But when we're talking, I think it has to be clarified that the trails are wider and close to streets, because that makes it a lot clearer for me. You know, and then I'd like a list maybe of all the trails we have that are wider. I don't know all of them in the village. You talk about them, but then I forget, you know. But I think that would help also, just to list the trails.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. Then we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I would get confused with the paths like in the park. I know that these are trails.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
We'll pull up the sidewalk and trail plowing map real quick, and then you guys will be able to see that. Now, this map is going to identify trails, paths, sidewalks, anything that is in our inventory that's either maintained or not maintained. When you see the map, it's going to show sidewalks, and either they're non-school routes that are maintained by the adjacent owner, or there's school routes that are maintained by the village.
Right.
Or they're not maintained at all. So there's only very few sections of sidewalk that's not maintained at all. Then we have our bike and pedestrian paths and trails. We have sections that are, there we go. Are you sharing that already?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can kind of see that. So the blue indicates sidewalk that's maintained by the village. The red is sidewalk that is maintained by the adjacent owner. The green is a trail or path that is not maintained in the winter. The yellow indicates that the trail is plowed. And then there is an orange in there as well. Those are sidewalks as well that are not maintained. And I think those are, by and large, those sidewalks that are not maintained are kind of connecting sections between two ends of trail, typically around an underpass or viaduct of some sort, or even close to an intersection. Looks like on Wabi Lane, there's a small section as well. So I think you can see by the map, you can also kind of connect the dots with trails that are not maintained, that are in the parks. You can kind of see like those sections there where you got the trails within the parks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have a layer on this map that shows kind of the parks, which is maybe something we could do for the next meeting. Just throw a green hash or something. I think Rex, that trail that connects Wabi Lane down to Main Avenue, is that all crusher dust? That kind of north-south trail?
No, that's paved. But it's along a creekway. That's the industrial park trail. It is paved, but it's certainly not plowed.
Sure.
It's more of a true recreational scenic type trail.
But I think it is used quite a bit for transportation because of the businesses that are located there. I will see people walking to work on the trail or biking to work, you know, like even from my residential neighborhood or from the apartments that are just to the north of where I live. So it does get used for transportation as well. I think especially the Wabi Lane path does, because International is right on the corner of Wabi and Packerland. So it does get used for transportation as well. Those two, you just don't think of it that way, especially the industrial park trail, because it, like you said, Rex, it kind of goes through a industrial area, but I think there's a fair amount of employees that do use that as well.
I think there's a fair amount of employees that use it for recreation. My own personal opinion is that a fair amount of employees use it for recreational walking, either before work or after work, for health reasons and enjoyment to get the hell out of the office. Excuse my language. That's kind of what it's used for. I also want to make sure people are aware with a lot of these DNR grants, which a lot of the trails we're able to do, there's a component, you know, that we get points for. When you plan on using this for cross-country skiing and other things, you know, like a multi-seasonal type trail. So, and I don't know how that all works per se. It's something we could certainly ask the DNR, but we get points because we're saying, yeah, you can use it for this, and this. If we start doing it specifically for transportation reasons, and you know, in the winter time, you know, it eliminates that recreational aspect, which means that now we're not doing what we said we were going to do to get some of the fun. So I'm just thinking this through a little bit as we're going forward. So you got to be careful of what gets maintained and what gets, you know, and even how we apply for grants in the future. If we're always looking at keeping them clear, if that's even a discussion point year round, then we're not going to be getting points of having a multi-year recreational trail where we can do cross-country skiing and some of these other things, which technically I think we might be getting points for.
Well, and I think that's something we need to check, Rex, you know, that letter that you sent me in regard to the south end of Packerland.
Yep.
Just see where we're at on there. I'm sure, like you said, maybe it was something we put in for points when that grant was received, but you see, when you're out there, you see the footprints. You don't see the ski prints, you don't see snowshoes, you see the footprints. So there's people that are out there that want to use it. So, you know, and maybe
I don't disagree on that.
You know, winter too, but I think with something we just need to check on and see what our options are for those trails as far as the DNR is concerned, if we got grants. I don't think the industrial park trail we got any grant for. I don't remember getting a grant for that one, but maybe.
I don't think so either, Tracy. I think that was pretty much TIF dollars.
Yeah, I think so too. So then that one's more open, but I think that southern section, if you can do some checking, I know we talked about that, just see what they say about that document that you had sent to me in regard to the use of the trail. That would be great.
Right.
And maybe next meeting you could bring that forth, because that obviously is a determinant factor on clearing that, especially that southern section of Packerland, because of the grant we got there.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that, you guys? As far as moving forward, any prioritization, other things that we really need to think of that you guys think is important? As far as if we go ahead and talk to the village board about trying to clear the trails. I know it's a comment I get when I've been out campaigning a lot. I've been hearing a lot from the residents in my neck of the woods about clearing the trails, wanting them clear for the winter because they're out there walking and they use them. A lot of our trails are not directly in the residential area, but they're close enough that you can easily get to them. And whether you're using, again, for recreation or transportation or whatever you're using it for, but they are heavily used, or would be heavily used, I think, in the winter months. They still are. There's a lot of people that are out there using them, even though they're kind of buried under snow. So
I find it a little difficult, to be honest with you, Tracy, to try and prioritize without having better data.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean data like, at this point, we don't want to do a special survey, right, to people and how they use it and when they use it and all that. So I get the idea of prioritizing it, but it would be, to me, it would make more, it would be simpler for me to make a judgment based off of data that I could use to make that decision.
yeah. Well, and then where do you get the data, right, Dale? We don't have it. And how do you get it? How do you justify to the people at by the Ashwaubenon Trail that are already asking for it to be cleared, and you say, no, we're not clearing yours, but we're going to clear the one over at Argonne Park, or we're going to clear the one out on the southwest corner of the village? You know, how do you ever go about justifying that? I think it's tough to say we're here but not do it there.
Yeah, and you figured that out. You let me know. We went through this last year
I know.
with the sidewalk, right? Doing the sidewalk on the other side. How we tell one side we're going to plow it and the other we're not. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
How about street trails versus non-street trails? Because if I'm looking at the map, Packerland's a street trail. The one by Argonne is cleared, that's a street trail, and most of the straight ones are street trails. The ones that are jagged, looks like they're more or less trails in parks, near parks, or by parks, or so forth, and those are non-street trails. Doesn't mean we don't have to clear them. It's just one way of verifying what we would do first, the street trails.
Yeah. You know, and the way the city of Green Bay takes care of their trails, any trails that are in the right of way, so adjacent, what you're calling street trails right now, are cleared by the Public Works Department. That's their job. Any that are by a park or entrance to a park are taken care of by the Parks Department. And then they have some of the schools take care of some of the trails that are adjacent to the schools. So that's just how Green Bay does it, but they clean all of their trails. The only ones they don't is if they have paved trails, like for instance at the sports complex. It wouldn't make a lot of sense for Rex to be clearing the trails out to the softball fields, because the softball fields are not going to be used during the winter months. So for him to clear that walkway, all those walkways out to the ball fields would make no sense, even though they're paved and they're more of a walkway. But so the Parks Department in Green Bay obviously does not clean any trails that go to facilities that will not be used in the winter months. So I think if we use kind of the same philosophy here, a lot of our trails are in the right of way. I mean, the only one, and when you think about it really, is the Industrial Park Trail. Well, and Ashwaubenon too. That one's down on the river. So those are the two big ones that would be off road right away.
Sherwood Park has pretty
Those
big
are
trails.
crushed grass though. Those are all crushed rock trails, just like
See,
Hidden Valley.
Okay.
Trails. So you wouldn't clear it all.
Okay.
So, but it's what do we say, about 9 miles of trail or so, or 8 something total that is paved. That would probably be part of this determination.
So what do we want to do with this? Do we want to not make a recommendation and just, or how do we want to proceed?
What does the committee feel about the trails being cleared in general? Is that important to you or is it not? Is it something that we want to move forward with?
I think we should keep pursuing it. This is Randy. I think we should keep pursuing it because I think the need for trails is growing. Not just preference of people, but almost, I'm kind of been doing some research online and through some other organizations about the mental health of people. And a lot of recommendations coming to people to get outside, walk, try to do it year round because of not just the stress of the pandemic, but the stress of everything else. And that's not going to go away. And I really think if we take that challenge seriously, we would look at ways in which we can support our residents. And this is one of them. I mean, we've all agreed, even public safety, the amount of walking we have seen now just through the winter is way beyond what we've had since I've lived out here. And the more we can do to make it safe and make it inviting, I think we should pursue. It's going to affect us in other ways. Maybe we can cut back on a public safety officer if we don't have so many domestic disturbances based on mental health.
Mental health, yeah.
It's all related.
Yeah.
It's all related. I think we have to seriously take a look at those connections.
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to give you some input. So I was in Wauwatosa last weekend with my son, and I'm telling you, there were so many people downtown. Of course, it was nice out, right? It's 40-some degrees, but they were driving their cars. They were walking. They're young people. They're not like me. Millennials don't want to drive. They want their pass. They want to walk their dogs. They want to be outside. They want to be able to take their kids and put them in a stroller and meet their friends on the path. It's a different world. It is. So Randy, I get what you're saying there.
So my comment, let me jump in here. Do we want to bring this or broach this with the village board immediately? Or the other option, and I don't care, I'm only throwing this out because it could go either way, is you also have the strategic planning survey coming. That would be really good backup if that survey turned out to be in support of trails and bike and pet facilities.
Sure.
To use that as a really strong backup to then bring this request to the village board for discussion. You can either do it now or wait till we get potentially good results back from the strategic planning survey. And I don't know which way you would want to go on that.
I thought of that while Randy was talking, like question 8's a big question. And the way you changed it, Randy, is good. Rather than say cut spending, cut related services, you know, and see what kind of response we get from people. Joel, from your past experience, what kind of a return do you normally get from something like this? Do you got an idea, percentage wise?
No, to be quite honest with you, and the reason why I say that is every community is different.
Yeah.
2 communities ago, a very active and engaged community where we get very, very high turnout. And then the next community I was in, it was a very apathetic community. So you probably would know better than I do from the Ashwaubenon perspective what the cultural makeup is, if people participate in these things or if they just kind of toss them into the trash, I guess. So I'll wait and see what that looks like here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think what I would maybe recommend is let's further our conversation as to the prioritization. Tracy had kind of laid out 3 things to kind of look at. And let's take that map that we have on our site and we can maybe send that out, Sue, and then we can kind of mark that up, right? What are your priorities? Maybe list them priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. Give each area that's unmaintained a priority. And we'll come back and see if those all align. And maybe all of them will be high priority. I'm not sure. At the end of the day, I did talk to Doug, and I forgot to include this in the packet. Based on what we're looking at from a cost perspective, if we were to internalize the cost to add additional mileage to maintain, we're at about $2,500. It's between $2,000 and $2,500 per mile to maintain. Now that's higher than the Fox River Trail, and Doug's reasoning behind that is because the Fox River Trail, after an event occurs, they go and they clear it and they're generally done with it. Whereas on these sidewalk trails, if you are these roadside trails, we're going to have to maintain that 2 or 3 times in order to maintain clearance on that because of the plowing activity that happens on the adjacent street. So the cost per mile is a little bit higher. So you just have to, we have to be cognizant of the fact that there's going to be an increase in cost to pick up that additional mileage. And so when you're making that recommendation, you just have to be aware of that because the board may be more cognizant of cost than they are about service. And so maybe there is a prioritization then within that that says, maybe we're not going out within 24 hours or not 48 hours, but within the week after a snow event, we'll clear them. There's a possibility of that. That might reduce your overall spend on that. Even if you go out and hire a third party, that's still a cost. And at that point, it becomes more of a variable cost versus a fixed cost. So I think we need to prioritize the map based on Tracy's recommendation. And then from there, we can kind of identify what that cost would be based on the prioritization. And then at that point, you have kind of the full picture then to present to the board. And then at that point, the survey will be done and you'll know how much backing and support you have in the community.
Joel, can I just clarify the 2,000 to 2,500 per mile is per time that they go out? Is that correct?
Let me just verify that.
Or is that like a whole year of?
Per year.
It's per year?
Per year.
Per year.
Okay. So then if we're talking 9 miles, let's say 9 miles of trails that we're clearing. So take the lower end, 2,000, that's $18,000 approximately per year, 18 to 20,000 per year to clear the 9 miles of trail throughout the village of Ashwaubenon. Is that what we're saying then for cost wise? Am I right on that?
And that would, yeah, we have a total of about 13 and a half miles that we don't maintain right now, I think. No, let me take that back. Let me pull this up.
I thought it was less than that, but.
Well, you're right. We have, we have about 12 and a half miles of trails and sidewalk that we don't maintain. About 9 of that is adjacent to the roadside.
Okay.
So yeah, about $18,000 to $22,000, $23,000 we'd be looking at for that additional mileage.
Okay. Okay, thank you for getting those numbers for us. So yeah, maybe if we can proceed that way. The one thing I don't want to miss out on is getting it as part of the budget process. Obviously, budget will start, what, in August or July or so? When you start looking at.
Probably sooner than that. So I would think if you can make a formal recommendation before May, right? So or sometime by the end of May. So over the next couple of months, you refine the approach and the map and the idea. You'll have that in before budget season even begins.
Okay. All right, so if we can get the map out then to everybody, and please think about prioritization if there's any other ways to do it. I really struggle with that because I think that there's a lot of desire in different places. And if we don't do it one place, how do we justify doing it the other place? So that's just something to keep in mind. And then we'll put this back on the next meeting then, please, and then we'll talk about it further, and we'll gotta get something done, you guys, whether we want to proceed or not, and go forward with this. Otherwise, it'll be another year, and it won't get part of the budget process, and it'll be another year out, and nothing will be decided or done.
So is it possible that we could also get the cost per taxpayer out of that 18,000 or whatever it is, so we know what it is per tax property? I mean, we're talking volume here.
Yeah. We could, I'm certain we could do that. It wouldn't equate to much per property, but that's a good idea, Dale. It's like it's 30 cents per property or $2 or whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
That's easy enough for that to be calculated out. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Anything else that anybody really wants to hear more about or wants some questions answered, so we can hopefully make a decision at our next meeting that they're like, or May meeting at the latest. Something that really you want an answer for, or you are thinking about and want to know.
I'm good.
Okay, so we'll put it back on the April meeting. That'll give us time to look at it then, if we can get those answers as we move forward, and then we'll put it on May if we need to look at it again. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. And then, let's see, where are we at? We did that. Okay, department reports, Park and Recs, do you have anything additional for us?
Before that, I think, before that, it's just the governor, the budget, the information piece before we have the reports.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Yeah.
Kyle sent out the information from the governor's budget. And I think, you know, coming from the governor and that he's looking at putting some really.
Sorry, that's number 10. Hang on.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
switching classes here, so.
Okay, so we'll do that in a minute then. We'll go back to, where the heck were we?
9 department reports.
Department reports, please. Rex, anything addition on a department report?
I'm good right now. I pretty much said everything, you know,
Okay.
that I was gonna say in different agenda items already, so nothing new.
Okay, thank you. State DOT, I know we don't have a rep here. Anybody have anything on state DOT to add? Public safety, I know we don't have Jason anymore. Jeff, I don't know if he bailed or not. If you have anything to add.
Nope, I'm still here. Nothing to add.
Okay, I have a question. I know Joel brought up a comment on, we had a pedestrian crash recently in the village. Can you tell us more about that? What happened or where that was at?
Sure, that was actually our shift. It was really early in the morning. It was going to be going eastbound on Pilgrim Way right by Best Buy in that area, more by Dick's Sporting Goods, straight in front of the store there. There were people walking across going to the south. The sun was just at a nasty angle at the time. The driver possibly had their windshield a little foggy. But to be honest, that sun was really brutal. We had a report that they did use the yellow lights to get across, but with that sun, it was they were unable to see it. So to solve it and prevent it from happening, I think it's more of just public education and the fact that those yellow lights can work, but if drivers don't see them, they're distracted, they're on their phone, or if that sun is nasty, it is really the pedestrian's responsibility to make sure that the cars see them as well in a way. And I think that people are just relying on those things as stop signs or even stop signs and stoplights people go through. So the person pretty much got hit and went through the windshield, and so that's all I have on it.
Were they Were they killed or severely injured or?
I can't really release any of that information just for HIPAA. They weren't killed, so
Okay.
No. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Was a driver speeding, you know?
No, from the information that we have and for how quickly they stopped, there weren't any skid marks, and it did not look like they were speeding. So from witnesses as well, that'd be a no.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Jeff, on public safety end?
Nope, I don't have anything else.
Okay. Thank you. And let's see, schools, again, we don't have a rep for that. I don't know if it's something, I know, Joel, you either met with the school recently or we're going to be, if there's a way we want to approach them again to see if they want to rep on this committee.
I did meet with them, but to be quite honest with you, I forgot to ask. So let me reach out to maybe Kurt over at the school district and see if they have someone that's interested.
Okay. Sounds good. And Wello, I don't believe Natalie's here. Anyone have a report from Wello at all?
I believe Terry got an email that she was ill. Natalie was ill.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to go to, if there's nothing else, we'll go to Governor Evers' information that Kyle had sent us. Basically, it looks like Governor Evers is trying to get eminent domain back for pedestrian and bike type facilities, which was, I don't know how many years ago it was taken out for that type of facility, and eminent domain was in the past used for getting bike and ped facilities in. He's looking at re-implementing complete streets in the state, which basically when any funding is used from state or federal, the community has to look at how they're going to also accommodate bikes and peds on that facility. And that looks like they're going to be looking at the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program and reauthorizing that and making sure the funding is available in there is another part of the budget process. Of course, as we all know, the budget has a long way to go through, but at least it's all in there at this point, and hopefully it will stay in there or some form of it. And I would imagine, Rex, that WPRA and maybe even WCMA are probably watching this and trying to stay on top of it as it moves through.
I know the league has been very interested in the eminent domain issue and has lobbied on that behalf. So that's a good thing if that goes through. I'm not sure where the league's position would be on the complete streets policy, just because it was pretty onerous, the original policy that was at the DOT level. So I'm not sure where the league is at with that guidance. I haven't heard anything one way or the other on that one.
All right. Any other questions or comments on Governor Evers' information on the budget? All right, then we have our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 12th. And then anything else to add? Otherwise, I would welcome a motion to adjourn, or if there's, sorry.
Just something quick for Joel. So when Randy brought up the excellent, good, fair, poor, I just kind of looked a little bit just to see what others use, and real typical is very dissatisfied, not satisfied, neutral, satisfied, and very satisfied. It's real common for surveys, but again, you do what you want. It's just something that might give you a little more from top to bottom.
Sure, I'll take a look at that one.
Good. Anything else? Otherwise, I would welcome a motion to adjourn. Somebody.
I'll motion to adjourn. This is Dale.
Second, Randy.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a
Thanks,
good
Tracy.
evening. See you next month.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, you too.